The City of Austin was approached by Troy Watkins at Austin High School to have a couple mentorship program students shadow us here in the Finance Department of the City of Austin. So we decided that we would have our staff, Melissa Wilson and Kim Hansen, and myself work with them on seeing some of the things that we do in the Finance Department, whether it be inputting payroll, accounts payable, going to the bank with the cash deposits, down to doing projections, reviewing what-if scenarios for some projects City of Austin has ongoing. A lot of the things they did were internally to the Finance Department, but as part of this assignment, the last thing I had them do was meet with different department heads to see how the Finance Department and those departments work hand in hand with each other as a team to accomplish the mission of the City of Austin. The goal is to make our taxpayers feel comfortable that the dollars we're spending, the processes we're using, and the security and safeguards we have in place are protecting their dollars, their cash, and are being spent wisely by the department heads based on the elected officials' actions for the expenditures for the year.
I'm Allison Ains.
My name is Joanne Law.
And we're mentoring with Tom Dinker at the City of Austin to see what it's like to be an accountant.
The purpose of this video was to see how different departments interact with the finance department and how their relationship works.
My name is Brian Krieger. I'm the police chief with the City of Austin. I've been the chief the last 8 years. Working with the finance department is obviously very critical in our line of work or any city department, because there's only so much of a budget for each agency and we have to stay within that. And Mr. Dankert is great to work with. The biggest project I worked on since I've been chief was we had a remodel project at the Law Enforcement Center. So I had to stay in contact with Mr. Dankert pretty much on a weekly or for sure monthly basis during that entire project to make sure that the project was staying within budget. There's only so many dollars to go around, and it's very important that we stay in that budget. Obviously, the police department doesn't generate a lot of revenue at all, so when there's tax levy or tax dollars funding the positions, the vast majority of our tax dollars goes towards just payment of the individuals, the staff that we have, and for our equipment, which is mostly the vehicles, the squad cars that we drive. So it's very important that we stay in budget and work closely with Mr. Dankert, and he gives us suggestions or ideas with the CIP, the Capital Improvement Program, for 5 years out of what new technology we may need or new squads down the road to make sure that those items are budgeted for. So 2 years, 3 years, 5 years down the road, that the money is there for our department.
Hi, I'm Jean Steinbrink. I'm with the Austin Police Department. I've been at the police department 8.5 years as their administrative assistant. I spent 25.5 years at the public library first, so I've had a good working relationship with the city finance department for 34 years. And through those years, we had a building project at the library, and I was responsible for the fund drive, so I depended on the finance department a lot with all the building costs and expenses going on. And then at the police department, I manage the finances there also. And when I started, we had some changeover in administrative staff, and they changed the accounting system, so I depended heavily upon the finance department with Tom Dankert and Kim Hansen to answer my questions to get us through that transition phase. And currently we just track a lot of things for the officers. We keep track of their clothing allowance and expenditures. So I work with payroll, so quite often I'm contacting Kim, working on the edits for the payroll. So we just work back and forth with each other, and it's really nice. I know if I have a question on anything with the finances of the police department, I email or I call Kim or Tom, and they always are able to answer my questions almost immediately, and that helps me do my job better. So we're really interdependent on each other, so we really enjoy that relationship, that good working relationship that helps us manage the city finances at the police department very well.
And so on a daily basis, what do you like, how do you coordinate with the finance department?
Well, for myself, since I'm doing the payroll and the bills, if I have questions on what account Tom would like me to use, I give him a call and say, hey Tom, I've got this money coming in, how would you like me to code it? If I have some payroll issues, I might contact him and say, we've got all these rates combining here for supervisor and holiday pay, how would you like me to take care of that? And so it's, I don't contact them daily, but I'd say weekly, once or twice a week, I'm in contact with them, helping us to process things as they want to process, so that everything balances out at the end of the year for the auditors when they come through.
I would defer that question pretty much to Jean because she handles the day-to-day finances. I get involved more when the projects get bigger, signing off on the purchase of a new squad car or a large ticket item that the department needs, and make sure that that is in our budget, that we can pay for it. And if it's not, we need to push it out for another year and make sure that we add it in the next year's budget plan, so we make sure that we can get that item that we need.
Is there anything else you guys want to talk about with your department and finance department?
Well, I just enjoy our working relationship. I think we have a good working relationship, and we have had that relationship and process for many years. So it's nice to know that if we need assistance with our job, we know that we can call and we always get an answer, and it's a timely answer. And also we know that when they need something done, they can contact us, and we can churn that out for them. So it works both ways. I think we're interdependent on each other, and it's nice to have that working relationship.
I'd say communication is key, and Mr. Dankert is very good at that, pointing out and giving suggestions or ideas for the future, and even day to day where we can look for or project in the future things that we may need that we may not think of ourselves. Again, with the technology changing all the time, we've got the in-squad cameras. We had to budget for that in advance, and now there's discussions been made about wearing body cameras. Well, that's a huge expense to roll out body cameras for all the officers. Would probably run somewhere in the neighborhood of $100,000. So that's a big ticket item that we would have to get Mr. Dankert on board, and then obviously the mayor and the city council before we'd ever get to that point. But right now, with the in-squad cameras that we're using, they also have recorders that the officers wear on their lapels. So when they get out of their squad car and they're talking to somebody on a traffic stop, that's getting picked up by the video in the squad car, plus the audio is being recorded. So when they go to court, they can have that information, and it's very advantageous to the officers for those purposes. So we've made a lot of advancement with technology over the last few years, and we can thank the finance department for helping us achieve those goals.
And also, I think the officers appreciate the good working relationship if they have a question on their payroll, or if they have a question on clothing allowance, or in one of their department funds, such as the CERT fund and the maintenance fund for the squads. Then they know they can contact me or contact the finance department to find out about their expenditures and how to best manage that money. So I think the working relationship trickles down all the way through the staff at the police department, and we really appreciate that.
Julie Kleinfelter, I'm the library director. I've been here at the library since 2003 in different functions. I was a substitute librarian for a long time, and then in 2014 they hired me as the tech services librarian, so I did cataloging and acquisitions and those kinds of things. And then I started as the director in May of 2017, so I'm just coming up on my 1 year, which is why I'm going to be reading notes mostly for the finance pieces, because I'm still figuring a lot of that out. But yeah, that's who I am, and yeah.
So how do you work with your employees and the board to create like a yearly budget?
Sure. So the library board has a finance committee, and we're getting ready to gear up here for the 2019 budget, so I'll meet with them to review the budget of the current year and determine which line items need either a little more or less funds. Once that work is done, I then take that draft to the city administrator and to the administrator services director and kind of go over that with them as well to receive their input and view of the library budget from a departmental kind of standpoint, and to see how that fits into the larger city piece. And then if there are changes, if they suggest changes, then I take that back to the finance committee for the board, and then when we've got that all ready to go, we take it to the library board and they approve it, and then that goes to the city council for approval. So that's throughout the process, the finance department is really instrumental in providing all the data that we need for those pieces passed, and communicating any information with me that might pertain to upcoming changes in the budget. So that's kind of how that process works. I've done it once, so this will be my real test this next year.
Does the library have any special projects that it needs to work with the finance department on?
Sure. We do, not maybe as often as some of the other departments, but we do, for instance, 2021 is our 25th anniversary of the building, and so we're looking into some special projects that might happen that year kind of as a celebration of that. And so what I will do with something like that is talk over the operational budget with the finance department and see what our options are there, and also work with the board to kind of figure out what monies we have for that or what monies we maybe need to raise. So yeah, that's kind of how that works, and it's the same thing with the capital improvement plans. The finance department really provides us with all the historical data and figures that we need for projects like that, and helps us calculate anticipated costs, and then helps us also consider kind of the budget in the wider city aspect piece of it, how we fit in.
So on a daily basis, what coordination occurs between the finance department and the library?
Sure. Well, so the main one would be payroll. Our administrative assistant gathers up all of our timesheets and brings them to me, and I approve them, and then they get submitted to finance in time for the payroll system to be working. Any questions that come up, if it's something that I can answer, I do, but a lot of times it's things that I can't answer, so that then also goes to the finance department. Our accounts payable, all of our vendor, any books that we purchase or anything that we purchase for the library, our vendors send invoices, and those are processed initially here by the admin assistant, who then who makes notes which accounts they need to go to, and gets all the bills ready to go, and then that all goes to the finance department. We track our billing and expenses on an ongoing basis and communicate back and forth with finance regarding any questions on payments or coding of those payments that have to happen. The finance department provides me with monthly reports on the status of our income and expenses for the budget year to date, which I then take to the library board at our monthly meetings, so that's really helpful. The finance department really plays a critical role in providing data and answering questions to enable us to review kind of ongoing how the budget's going and where we're at. And then grants, most grants require a couple things that we need then from the finance department: an estimate of how much money is needed for the project, maybe based on other projects that have happened in the city, and then the tracking of the actual expenses that then have to be when the grant is awarded. That kind of covers those 4 things.
I have a question that's not on the sheet.
Uh-oh.
So that's not
That's
good.
okay.
Do you guys do any fundraising on your own? If
We-
a special project comes up.
Sure. Sure, we do. We also have a Friends of the Library group, and they're The library isn't necessarily technically 501c3, so we're not really recognized as a nonprofit because we are part of the city, but we have a Friends of the Library group that is nonprofit, and they do a lot of fundraising for us. We do a lot of fundraising through them. Again, for this 2021 project, that's probably what we'll end up doing. We'll look for grants, but we'll also do some fundraising, and that'll probably be mostly coordinated by the Friends of the Library. Like we just had a book sale. We have book sale twice a year, and that's all put on by the Friends of the Library. They organize it, and then that money goes either directly to us or to the Minnesota Library Foundation, and then they kind of distribute it there. Anything else?
Hi, I am Kim Underwood. I am the director at the Austin Parks, Recreation, and Forestry Department. That includes the Nature Center as well.
Okay, so how does your department and the finance department work together to create a budget?
So what happens with, we are governed by a 7-member board, which is a little different than just answering to the city council. Our board approves our budget off of like an amount of money that they'll give us to spend, okay? So then we put together what we think we need with sheets that we are generated from the finance department, comes back to our department, and we fill in our budgets on everything that we do and supplies, equipment, if we need personnel. We then make that ask and put in what we think we're gonna put in. Then we go through this process that we all meet and go over all of our numbers. Sometimes they'll give us a parameter. You could go up 5%, 2%, 0%. I mean, sometimes it is, what can you cut? What areas can you cut if we're having a LGA cuts or things like that. So they're always trying to keep us apprised of what's happening with that. And then we just discuss everything we think we need and what departments, we all kind of fit it together then. I should say the finance department fits it all together from all of our asks, and then he is tasked with trying to come below the numbers that he needs to be at. So sometimes we maybe meet more than once. And of course we have to go through several meetings, and Mr. Jankic goes through that with the city council and tells them everything that has to stay in our budgets, and then the spots that we can maybe cut or change some.
How does the budget work with special projects like the Nature Center expanding or remodeling the Justice Center?
Okay, so when we went for the ask for the new Nature Center, it was a really cool process. Trying to figure out where our funding would come from. Obviously, we ended up at the Hormel Foundation, and we did an ask for them. Had other donations from other people and companies, as well as the city of Austin. So trying to get partners to do a $7 million project. There was a fundraising campaign from the Friends of the Nature Center for the exhibit display. And it was just it was a cool process to go through to figure out where you're gonna get your money and how you were gonna get your project to all come together. And it happened. It was fun.
Okay, so on a daily basis, what coordination occurs between the finance department and your department?
Maybe not so much daily, but obviously we have weekly or every other week deadlines. So payroll is on one schedule, accounts payable is on another. So all of our guys who have purchase orders out there to buy the things that they need throughout their week have to turn them over to our park supervisor. Our park supervisor then brings them up to Patty, who processes everything. So in our department, we're a little different than some of them that we enter everything. So Patty enters all of her payables and accounts receivable and gets that stuff down to finance for them to cut checks and know what our deposits were to reconcile bank statements. The Nature Center then has to do the same as our park supervisor, bring all their dollars. I mean, they'll go to the bank, but they have to bring us their deposit receipts, and Patty records those and gets them down to Melissa, and we kind of go back and forth like that. Same with payables. They have to bring those in. We take care of all those budgets. And you have to stay within your budget numbers, and that is the key. So if there's something breaks and it's not in your budget, then I go down and I speak with the finance director and say, all right, so we had this problem, and maybe in our CIP we said this piece of equipment wasn't going to be replaced for 3 years. Can I swap them out? I may have to ask the council. Obviously, I first have to ask my park board, and then I go to my council. So I go through that extra little step that I take everything to the park board. But it's maybe not daily, but always. It seems like a lot of weekly stuff we do ask them, and budget-wise, obviously, we work pretty close together.
So do you have anything else you want to say about your department and the finance department?
The finance department is an integral part of what we all do. Trying to, it kind of goes around in a circle, and they're the ones that generate our checks. They help us if we have a problem that can we find money someplace else, give us some ideas, where should we go get that, or we're having a project, do you have any ideas on where we should get fundraising or that kind of thing. So it's just we're all different departments, but if you are a team, you knit together, that's the best part. And I think that's the good part about it. Finance department is your friend. I'm wondering how this mentoring has gone for you with the City of Austin, in the finance department, and if you're learning anything from that.
I'm learning a lot of interesting things because this is a government entity. I always thought that I wanted to go into finance, but I wanted to work for a private company. So this is interesting to see a different side, or like something that I could go into.
Very nice.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing, and then it's also just helpful getting a lot more like accounting experience before college.
So this is truly the path you want to take.
So far, yes.
It's a great path, and I agree. Government is different from private. I was in the private sector as well, but as you learn through talking to these different departments, I think it's gonna help you. Is there anything that you see so far when you've been helping down in finance that raised questions for you guys that you wanted, from us? Different techniques maybe, or
I think I would just like to know how everybody decided to work in finance, or their path to get here to where they are, so I could build my path.
Okay.
Yeah, if I had any questions, it'd probably just be advice.
Got it. There's a lot of different finance paths. You're right, but learning how all of this comes together, and it's a big responsibility. That department. It's a small department, and they do a lot.
And that's the end.